The beautiful Apache woman fell off her horse and broke her leg. Only a lonely farmer helped her. Birds sang as they flitted from tree to tree, and a gentle breeze moved across the grass, whispering through the tall stalks. The land stretched endlessly, a vast mixture of green fields and patches of rocky soil. In this quiet morning, a young Apache woman rode her horse with ease and grace, her long dark hair flowing behind her like a river of silk. She was strong and independent, known among her people for her courage and skill. Her horse, a powerful chestnut stallion, followed her every command without hesitation. Together, they were a team, moving as one across the plains. The woman loved these early hours when the world seemed calm and untouched. She had grown up on these lands and felt a deep connection to the earth beneath her feet, to the animals around her, and to the sky above. Each ride was a chance to feel free, to leave behind the worries of her small village, and to enjoy the beauty of the natural world. Today, she decided to ride farther than usual, drawn by curiosity to explore a part of the plains she had never seen before. She guided her horse carefully over gentle hills and past sparkling streams, her eyes shining with excitement. As the morning passed, the ground began to change. Where soft grass had covered the land before, there were now sharp rocks and uneven soil. The horse moved cautiously, its hooves clattering against the stones. The woman urged it forward gently, confident in her abilities and in the trust she had built with her animal companion. But the plains could be unpredictable, even to someone who knew them well. A sudden shift of the horse's footing on a loose rock caused it to stumble. The woman tried to steady herself, gripping the reins tightly and leaning forward, but it was too late. The horse lost its balance, and in a terrifying moment, she was thrown from its back. The world seemed to spin as she fell. She tried to protect herself, tucking her arms close, but the landing was hard. Pain shot through her right leg like fire, sharp and unyielding. She let out a cry, the sound echoing across the empty plains. For a moment she lay still, stunned and unable to move, as the horse scrambled to its feet nearby, whinnying in alarm. The pain in her leg was intense, and she quickly realized that she could not stand. Something was very wrong. The leg felt twisted and heavy, and every tiny movement sent sharp pain through her body. She was alone, far from anyone who could help, and a feeling of fear began to creep into her heart. The woman tried to stay calm, taking deep breaths to steady herself. She looked around, hoping to see anyone who might come to her aid. The plains were empty. There were no travelers, no villagers, no sign of help anywhere. Only the endless stretch of land and the distant hills greeted her gaze. She called out, her voice trembling, but the sound seemed swallowed by the wind and the open space. For a moment, she felt a wave of despair. How long would she have to wait? Would anyone find her in time? Her mind raced, imagining all the dangers that could come with being alone in the wilderness. The risk of wild animals, the cold if the sun set, or simply the overwhelming loneliness. She tried to move, thinking she could crawl to some kind of shelter, but the pain in her leg was unbearable. Every attempt sent waves of agony through her body. She realized she had to accept her situation. She could not get up on her own. Sitting there on the rough ground, she felt the weight of the moment. Fear and frustration mixed together, but deep inside her, a small spark of determination remained. She had survived difficult times before, and she would not give up completely, even in this frightening moment. Still, the uncertainty of how long she might have to endure the pain was frightening. Time passed slowly. The sun climbed higher, warming the earth, but it could not chase away her discomfort. She tried to distract herself, remembering the stories her family had told her about her ancestors and the strength they had shown in difficult times. Thinking about their courage gave her a small comfort, a reminder that she was not powerless. She whispered their names softly, letting the memory of their bravery give her a sense of calm. Each minute that passed felt like an hour, but she refused to lose hope completely. As she waited, she noticed small details around her she had never truly appreciated before. The way the grass swayed in the breeze, the sound of birds singing in the distance, the subtle sparkle of sunlight on rocks and leaves. It was as if the plains themselves were holding her in a gentle embrace. She realized that even in pain, there was beauty. The world continued on, indifferent to her suffering, yet full of life and small wonders. Observing these details helped her cope with the fear and pain, reminding her that there was still something worth noticing and valuing in the world around her. Hours seemed to pass in this way. Her strength was fading, and she began to feel exhaustion creeping over her, but she refused to give in to despair. She tried to shift her position slightly, careful not to move her broken leg too much, and to stay as comfortable as she could. She sipped from the small water skin she carried, grateful for its contents. It was a slow, painful, and lonely struggle, but she endured it. Every moment was a test of patience and resilience. She reminded herself that if she could survive the fall, she could survive the waiting. She only needed someone to notice her, someone to come and help. As the afternoon approached, clouds began to gather in the sky. The weather was changing, and a light wind started to blow. The thought of a storm arriving while she was still alone made her shiver. She pulled her jacket closer around her shoulders, trying to shield herself from the chill. The plains could be harsh, but she knew she had to remain vigilant. Her mind was alert, scanning the horizon for any sign of life, any movement that might signal a human presence. Every sound, every shadow of movement made her heart leap with hope, but the land remained empty and quiet. Just as the sun began to descend, casting long golden shadows across the plains, she saw something in the distance, a small figure moving slowly along the horizon. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, but as the figure grew closer, she realized it was a man. He walked with a careful, measured pace, carrying something over his shoulder. Her heart leapt with hope, and she tried to call out, her voice weak from the long hours of pain. The man looked up, and she saw his expression shift from surprise to concern. He slowed down, then moved quickly toward her, approaching with careful steps. Finally, the man reached her. He was a farmer who lived alone on the edge of the plains, known in his small community for keeping to himself and tending to his fields quietly. Despite his solitary life, he had a kind heart, and seeing someone in trouble could not leave him indifferent. He knelt beside her, speaking gently and asking if she was hurt. She nodded, unable to speak clearly, her leg throbbing in pain. He carefully examined her injury and realized immediately that she needed help. With patience and care, he began planning how to lift her safely without causing further pain, knowing the long journey back to his home would be difficult. The farmer moved slowly and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice, telling her she was safe and that he would not leave her alone. Relief washed over her, and tears came to her eyes. For the first time since the fall, she felt hope. There was someone who cared, someone who could help her endure the pain and get her to safety. She trusted him enough to allow him to help, and together, they prepared to move her carefully across the plains. The sun continued to set, turning the sky into a deep orange and red, while the farmer lifted her gently onto a makeshift stretcher he had brought. Each careful step brought them closer to safety, and though she was still in pain, she knew that her ordeal was not over yet, but the worst was behind her. The plains stretched endlessly around them as the farmer carefully carried the Apache woman toward his home. Every step was slow and deliberate. The pain in her leg pulsed with each movement, and she gritted her teeth to endure it. She had never felt so vulnerable in her life, so completely dependent on someone else. But as she looked into the farmer's calm and focused eyes, she felt a flicker of trust. He seemed determined to help her, and for the first time since her fall, she dared to hope that she would survive this ordeal. The farmer walked with care, avoiding rocks and rough patches as much as possible. Sweat beaded his forehead in the afternoon heat, but he ignored it, focused solely on her safety. He spoke occasionally in a low, steady voice, giving her encouragement. "Almost there," he said, "just a little further." The woman nodded weakly, holding on to the words, letting them anchor her in the moment. She could barely respond, her throat dry and her body exhausted, but the sound of his voice gave her courage. As they moved across the plains, the shadows began to lengthen. The sun sank lower in the sky, painting the land in deep shades of gold and red. The wind grew colder, rustling the grass and sending a chill through her body. She shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. The farmer noticed and adjusted the blanket he had brought, covering her carefully to keep her warm. "We'll get you home before it gets dark," he said. But the woman knew the journey was longer than it seemed. Every step caused her pain, and the rough terrain made progress slow. Along the way, she thought about how she had ended up here. She had always loved exploring the plains, feeling the wind on her face and the freedom of riding her horse. She had never expected a simple ride to turn into such a dangerous situation. She remembered the moment the horse stumbled, the sudden loss of balance, the fall, the sharp, searing pain in her leg. It all seemed like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. But now, with the farmer by her side, she realized that help could arrive even in the most unexpected ways. The farmer, meanwhile, was concentrating on the difficult task of moving her safely. He had seen injuries before, but nothing quite like this. Her leg was badly broken, and any wrong movement could make it worse. He adjusted her position carefully on the stretcher, making sure the weight was evenly distributed. He kept talking to her, trying to distract her from the pain. "Almost there," he repeated. "You're doing very well." His voice was steady, calm, and kind. It was a small comfort in the midst of her fear and pain. Hours seemed to pass slowly as they moved through the plains. The woman's strength was fading. Every time she tried to shift slightly, her leg throbbed violently, and she had to stop to catch her breath. Her mind began to wander. She thought of her family, of the village she had left that morning. She worried about what they would think when they realized she had not returned. Would they come looking for her? Would they be afraid? These thoughts added a layer of anxiety to her physical pain, and tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. But she refused to cry openly, unwilling to show how helpless she felt. The landscape changed as they moved closer to the farmer's home. The open plains gradually gave way to patches of trees, and the ground became slightly softer. She noticed the scent of flowers carried by the breeze, the faint hum of insects, and the distant sound of a stream. These small signs of life brought her some comfort, a reminder that she was not completely alone in the world. The farmer continued to move with care, adjusting her position whenever necessary. Despite the exhaustion in his own body, he never showed frustration or impatience. His focus was entirely on helping her reach safety. The sun was beginning to set when they finally saw the farmer's small farmhouse in the distance. It was modest, built from wood and stone, with smoke curling from the chimney. The sight of the house gave her a small surge of hope. Safety was near. She could feel relief growing in her chest, mingled with exhaustion and lingering fear. The farmer quickened his pace slightly, careful not to jostle her too much. He wanted to get her inside before darkness fell completely, knowing that the night could bring new dangers. When they arrived at the farmhouse, the farmer carefully carried her inside. The warmth of the house was immediately comforting. The air smelled of wood smoke and herbs, a homey, safe scent that made her feel slightly better despite the pain. The farmer laid her gently on a simple bed, adjusting the blankets to keep her warm. He inspected her leg again, checking for swelling and other signs of injury. "It's broken badly," he said quietly, "but we'll take care of it. You'll be all right." His calm confidence gave her hope. The woman looked around the room, taking in her surroundings. It was simple but cozy, with a small fireplace, wooden furniture, and a few decorations that hinted at the farmer's quiet life. She realized that he lived alone, in a place far from anyone else. Yet despite his solitude, he had risked his own comfort to help her. She felt a sense of gratitude and a connection to him that she could not explain. In this moment, she understood that kindness could come from the most unexpected people, and that trust could be built in even the most difficult circumstances. The farmer prepared a small mixture of herbs and water to help ease the pain. He applied it carefully to her leg, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "It will hurt less soon," he said. "You're very brave." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears once more. She wanted to speak to thank him properly, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she gave a small, grateful smile, hoping he would understand. The pain was still there, sharp and constant, but it was slightly more bearable with his attention and care. Night fell and the farmhouse was filled with quiet sounds, the crackling of the fire, the soft rustling of the blankets, and the occasional whistle of wind outside. The woman lay on the bed, exhausted but feeling safe for the first time since her fall. The farmer sat nearby, keeping watch, ready to help if anything went wrong. She thought about the plains she had crossed, the fall that had brought her here, and the kindness of a stranger who had helped her in her moment of need. It was a lot to process, but she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Throughout the night, she drifted in and out of sleep, the pain sometimes waking her, sometimes receding enough to let her rest. The farmer remained alert, tending to her needs quietly, fetching water, adjusting blankets, and speaking gentle words of encouragement. Though they did not know each other well, a quiet bond was forming, a connection built on trust, care, and shared experience. By the time morning came, she felt slightly stronger, the fear of being alone replaced by a sense of hope and relief. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the room. The woman could see the farmer moving quietly around the small house, tending to his chores before focusing again on her care. She felt a small sense of wonder. Someone she did not know had gone out of their way to help her, to care for her when she could not help herself. It was a reminder that even in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, there were people capable of great kindness and selflessness. In those first hours of her recovery, she began to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The fall, the pain, the long hours of waiting alone in the plains, all of it seemed distant now, though it had left a mark on her body and her mind. She realized that strength was not only about being able to ride fast or face danger. It was also about enduring pain, trusting others, and allowing oneself to accept help when needed. This realization brought her a quiet sense of peace, even as the road to full recovery remained long. By the end of the second day, she was able to sit up slightly, supported by pillows and the farmer's careful guidance. The pain in her leg was still sharp, but less overwhelming than before. She had survived the first critical hours, and with the farmer's help, she felt she could survive the next steps. Though she did not yet know what the future held, she understood that she was not alone, and that sometimes help could come from the most unexpected sources. The bond between her and the farmer, quiet and unspoken, was beginning to grow, rooted in trust, courage, and the shared experience of a moment that had changed both of their lives. The morning after the fall, the Apache woman's pain had slightly lessened, but her broken leg still throbbed with every small movement. The farmer had prepared a simple breakfast for both of them, placing a small plate of bread and fruit on the wooden table. The smell of the food filled the cozy kitchen, and though she could not eat much, the warmth of the house and the farmer's careful attention brought her comfort. She tried to smile, feeling the faint stirrings of hope deep inside her. She was still in pain, still vulnerable, but she was no longer alone. That realization alone made her heart feel lighter. The farmer looked at her gently, his expression calm but focused. "We need to treat your leg properly," he said. He had already cleaned and dressed the wound to prevent infection, but he knew that a proper splint would help her heal faster. He gathered some wood from his workshop, smoothing the edges carefully so that nothing would hurt her delicate skin. He moved slowly, aware of her sensitivity and the sharp pain she still felt with the slightest pressure. He tried to explain each step of what he was doing in simple words, so she would understand and feel safe. Though they did not speak the same language perfectly, gestures, tone, and patience made communication possible. The woman watched him, marveling at his patience. He never seemed frustrated or impatient, even though the task was difficult and required careful attention. Every move he made was deliberate, thoughtful, and precise. She could see that he genuinely cared about her well-being, and that thought brought her a sense of security she had not felt in days. She felt a quiet gratitude grow inside her, mingled with admiration for the man who had risked so much to help a stranger in need. It was rare, she thought, to meet someone so selfless in a world that often demanded caution above all else. Once the splint was ready, the farmer carefully placed her leg onto it. He positioned it in such a way that it would support the broken bones without causing unnecessary pain. He tied it securely, using strips of cloth from an old sheet. Every movement was deliberate and slow, ensuring that she felt safe and supported. She winced at the sharp twinges of pain, but he reassured her gently, "It's almost done. You're very brave." His words were simple, but the tone carried kindness and encouragement. The trust between them deepened in that moment, silent and unspoken, yet powerful. After the splint was secured, the farmer helped her sit upright, propping her with pillows so that she could rest comfortably. The weight of her body shifted carefully onto her uninjured leg, and she let out a small sigh of relief. The pain was still present, but the splint made it manageable. She felt a renewed sense of hope. For the first time since her fall, she realized that she could begin to recover, not just physically, but also emotionally. The fear and panic of being alone in the plains were beginning to fade, replaced by a sense of trust and gratitude toward the man who had saved her. During the following hours, the farmer continued to care for her. He prepared warm compresses for her leg to reduce swelling and brought her sips of water to keep her hydrated. He even made a simple broth, using vegetables and herbs he had grown himself, which she could manage to drink despite her weakened state. Every action he took was thoughtful, showing his concern for her comfort and well-being. She began to notice small things about him, how carefully he moved, how patiently he spoke, and the quiet dedication that filled every gesture. These observations made her feel a connection growing, something beyond mere gratitude. As the day passed, the woman began to tell the farmer, in broken words and gestures, about her life in the village. She spoke of her family, her people, and the plains she loved to ride across. The farmer listened carefully, nodding and asking questions with gentle curiosity. Though their conversation was simple and often required repetition, there was an understanding between them that did not depend entirely on words. She began to feel that this man, who had appeared in her life at the most desperate moment, was someone she could rely on, someone she could trust completely. The farmer, in turn, began to share small details of his own life. He spoke of the farm he tended, the solitude of his daily routine, and the work that occupied his time. He had always lived alone, he explained, but helping her brought a sense of purpose that he had never realized was missing. There was no judgment in his words, no expectation, only the quiet honesty of someone who cared deeply for another human being. The woman listened with interest, sensing that they were both learning from this unexpected encounter. Trust, respect, and understanding were forming between them, slowly and naturally. Even as they talked, the woman's leg remained painful, and she had to be careful not to overexert herself. The farmer reminded her frequently to rest, supporting her back with pillows whenever she sat upright. He would occasionally massage the muscles near her injury gently to ease stiffness, always checking for signs of discomfort. She appreciated his patience and attention, realizing that healing was not just about fixing bones, but also about care, compassion, and presence. The act of being cared for, she realized, could be as powerful as any medicine. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the small windows of the farmhouse, casting warm patterns across the floor. The woman's eyes followed the light, tracing its movement as it shifted across the room. She thought about the planes she had fallen from, the wide-open spaces she loved, and the accident that had changed everything. It was a humbling experience. She realized life could shift in a single moment. Yet in that same moment, there was also the possibility of human kindness, courage, and connection. That balance of fragility and hope made her heart both heavy and full at the same time. The farmer prepared a small bed of straw near the fireplace so that she could lie down comfortably in the evening. He carried her gently, careful not to jostle her leg, and laid her down with care. The warmth of the fire and the soft bedding brought her comfort, and for a few moments, she allowed herself to relax fully. She felt tired, her body exhausted from the fall and the strain of the journey, but there was a growing sense of safety that allowed her to breathe more easily. She realized that, despite the pain, she had survived something truly difficult, and she had done so with the help of another person's kindness. Night fell over the farmhouse, and the quiet sounds of the evening filled the room. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and the faint rustle of animals moving in the dark added to the atmosphere of calm. Inside, the woman rested, feeling the steady presence of the farmer nearby. He continued his quiet tasks, checking on her every so often and adjusting the blankets to keep her warm. She could feel his dedication, and it gave her a sense of security she had not felt in a long time. For the first time since her fall, she truly believed that she could recover. The next day, the farmer helped her with small movements to prevent stiffness and promote healing. He showed her gentle exercises to strengthen the muscles around her leg, explaining carefully how to move without causing pain. She followed his instructions, wincing at times but trusting his guidance. Each small success, a slight bend, a gentle stretch, brought relief and a sense of accomplishment. She realized that healing was not instantaneous, but with patience and careful effort, progress was possible. Her spirits lifted with each passing hour, and she began to feel a faint sense of optimism. As the days passed, the woman began to participate in small tasks around the farmhouse. She helped wash vegetables, stir simple meals, and even tend to a few small chores she could manage while seated. These activities gave her a sense of independence and purpose, even as she remained reliant on the farmer for support and care. The bond between them continued to grow, deepening with each shared moment of trust, conversation, and cooperation. They had come together through necessity, but now a quiet friendship began to form, rooted in respect and mutual understanding. Through the slow, steady process of care and recovery, the woman realized that her life had been profoundly changed by the fall and by the farmer's help. She had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty, yet she had found compassion, patience, and kindness in someone she had never known. She understood now that human connection could emerge in the most unexpected places, and that trust and gratitude were powerful forces that could help people endure even the most difficult circumstances. Her heart, once heavy with fear, now held a quiet sense of hope. By the end of this third day, she could sit upright more comfortably and even move her legs slightly without extreme pain. The splint held firm, and the farmer continued to monitor her condition closely. Each small improvement was celebrated silently, a reminder that healing was happening step by step. She reflected on the journey so far, the fall, the fear, the long hours of waiting, the farmer's arrival, and the steady care that followed, and felt a deep appreciation for the life lessons embedded in this experience. Though she still had a long road to recovery, The woman understood that she was not alone. The farmer's presence, his patience, and his dedication had given her a chance to heal both physically and emotionally. In this quiet farmhouse, far from her village and the open plains she loved, she had found safety, compassion, and a human connection that would stay with her long after her leg was fully healed. And in that understanding, she felt a sense of peace she had not known in many days. The days passed slowly but steadily as the Apache woman's leg continued to heal. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the farmhouse, the gentle chores, and the quiet presence of the farmer who had saved her. Each morning, she awoke to the soft light streaming through the windows and the smell of warm bread or simmering herbs. The fire crackled in the hearth, and the world outside seemed calm and patient, waiting for her to regain her strength. For the first time since her accident, she felt a sense of security that allowed her to think beyond her pain and the accident that had brought her here. The farmer had become her constant companion, not only in the practical tasks of her recovery, but also in offering quiet encouragement and reassurance. He helped her practice moving her leg gently, showing her how to balance and shift her weight without causing further injury. With each small success, a bend, a shift, a few steps using a sturdy cane, her confidence grew. She began to see that her body could heal, that her strength was returning, and that she could once again face the wide plains that had always been a part of her life. Her spirit, once weighed down by fear, started to lift with each passing day. Despite her progress, there were moments when the pain returned sharply, reminding her of the fragility of her situation. In those moments, the farmer's presence was invaluable. He would sit beside her, offering words of comfort and gentle guidance. He would remind her to breathe, to relax, and to trust the process. Sometimes he would massage the muscles around her injury to ease tension, or he would fetch warm compresses to reduce swelling. Even without fully understanding each other's language, their communication was clear. He was there for her and she was not alone. Each act of care, each patient gesture, reinforced the bond that had quietly grown between them. The woman also began to notice small things about the farmer that she had not observed before. His hands were strong and steady from years of hard work on the farm, yet capable of gentle, careful movements when tending to her. His eyes, usually calm and observant, showed a softness when he looked at her, a kind of quiet attentiveness that made her feel safe. She began to sense that his solitude had not made him cold or indifferent, but patient, reflective, and capable of deep compassion. In this realization, she felt a mix of gratitude and admiration, recognizing that he was a rare and remarkable person. As she regained some mobility, the farmer began to encourage her to participate more in daily life. She helped prepare meals, wash vegetables, and even feed a few small animals that lived near the farmhouse. These activities, though simple, gave her a sense of independence and purpose. She realized that her recovery was not just about her leg. It was about reclaiming her confidence and her ability to engage with the world around her. Every small task she completed, every gentle movement she managed without pain, was a victory. And each victory strengthened her trust in the farmer, who guided her patiently and celebrated each step of progress quietly but sincerely. The afternoons became times of quiet reflection for the woman. She would sit near the window, watching the sunlight move across the fields and trees outside. She thought about her family, her village, and the plains she loved so dearly. She missed them deeply but knew that returning too soon would be dangerous. She realized that this period of recovery, though unplanned, was teaching her patience, resilience, and the importance of accepting help from others. In the silence of the farmhouse, she felt a growing sense of gratitude for the man who had saved her life and cared for her so thoroughly. The farmer also seemed to change in subtle ways during this time. His days, once filled only with chores and solitude, now held a new focus and energy. He moved with purpose, always attentive to her needs, and his interactions with her grew warmer and more relaxed. Though neither of them spoke much about their feelings directly, there was a quiet understanding between them, a recognition that they had become essential parts of each other's lives. Their bond, formed under circumstances of crisis, was now reinforced by shared effort, mutual respect, and the slow, steady process of healing. One afternoon, the woman attempted a small walk around the farmhouse, using the farmer's support and a sturdy cane. Her leg was still weak, but she wanted to test her strength and regain some independence. The farmer held her hand, guiding her step by step. Each movement was cautious, deliberate, and slow. The sunlight warmed her face, the wind brushed gently against her skin, and for a moment she felt a sense of freedom returning. The plains, the open skies, and the wide fields she had loved so much seemed not so distant now. She realized that recovery was as much about rebuilding confidence and courage as it was about physical healing. During these walks, the woman began to share more about her past and her experiences in the village. She spoke of her family's traditions, of the skills she had learned from her elders, and of the pride she felt in her community. The farmer listened attentively, occasionally asking questions with curiosity. He seemed genuinely interested, not just in her words, but in understanding the life she had lived before this accident. She realized that his interest was a form of care, a way of connecting with her beyond the immediate tasks of healing. In turn, she began to feel more comfortable around him, less like a patient and more like a companion. Evenings at the farmhouse were peaceful, filled with small routines and quiet companionship. The woman would rest near the fire while the farmer completed his chores, or they would sit together in silence, listening to the soft sounds of the night outside. Sometimes the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint sounds of distant animals or the whisper of the plains. These moments of quiet became opportunities for reflection and understanding, reinforcing the connection between them. They did not need many words to communicate. Their shared experiences, small acts of care, and mutual respect spoke volumes. As the days turned into weeks, the woman's leg grew stronger, the swelling reduced, and the pain became more manageable. She was able to move with greater ease, though she still required caution and the farmer's support. The progress, though gradual, filled her with a quiet sense of accomplishment. She understood that healing was not instantaneous, but a patient process requiring time, care, and perseverance. And she also recognized that this journey had brought unexpected lessons. Lessons about trust, compassion, and the extraordinary capacity of people to help each other in times of need. During one particular afternoon, as they sat outside the farmhouse enjoying the warmth of the sun, the woman noticed a deeper change in herself. She no longer felt the same fear and vulnerability that had overwhelmed her after the fall. Instead, she felt a renewed sense of hope and confidence. She had endured pain, navigated uncertainty, and relied on another human being in a moment of vulnerability. In doing so, she had discovered resilience, courage, and the transformative power of kindness. And in the farmer, she had found not just a helper but a friend, someone whose presence had been both practical and profoundly meaningful. The farmer, too, seemed to recognize the significance of their time together. He had become more open, more relaxed, and more willing to share his own experiences and thoughts. Their conversations, though simple, were rich in understanding. They had begun to rely on each other emotionally as well as physically, forming a bond built on mutual respect and shared experience. The accident that had initially brought them together had evolved into something far deeper, a connection that neither of them could have anticipated, yet both had come to value greatly. As the sun set on another day, casting long shadows across the fields, the woman felt a quiet gratitude for the journey she had been through. The fall, the pain, and the long hours of waiting alone in the plains had all led her to this farmhouse, to this moment of safety, care, and companionship. She understood now that life could be unpredictable, that danger could appear when least expected, and that human kindness could emerge in the most unlikely places. Her heart, once heavy with fear, now held a gentle sense of hope, trust, and appreciation for the farmer who had helped her heal. By the end of this fourth part of her journey, she could walk short distances with confidence, aided by the cane and the farmer's watchful eye. She realized that her life was slowly returning to normal, and that she could look forward to the day she would return to her village, stronger and more resilient than before. But she also knew that the experience had changed her forever, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. She had learned to trust, to accept help, and to appreciate the quiet, extraordinary acts of kindness that could transform even the most challenging moments of life. The Apache woman awoke that morning with a sense of anticipation she had not felt in weeks. Her leg, once broken and swollen, now felt stronger, more steady under her weight. The farmer had been beside her throughout her recovery, helping her regain mobility and encouraging her with patience and care. The sun poured golden light through the windows, warming the small farmhouse, and she felt a quiet excitement for the day ahead. She knew that she was nearing the point where she could return to her village, but she also understood that this moment marked the culmination of more than just physical healing. It was the end of one journey and the beginning of another, one that would forever carry the memory of the kindness that had saved her life. The farmer prepared a simple breakfast for both of them, placing warm bread, fruit, and a small bowl of broth on the table. As she ate, she realized how much she had come to rely on the rhythms of this place, on the calm presence of the man who had rescued her. Her gratitude ran deeper than words could express. She tried to convey it in her gentle smiles, in her attempts at conversation, and in small gestures of thanks. The farmer nodded quietly, his eyes conveying understanding. He did not need her words to know that she was thankful. Over the past weeks, they had developed a bond that transcended language, one rooted in trust, care, and shared experience. After breakfast, the woman and the farmer took a short walk around the farmhouse. She used a sturdy cane for support, her movements careful and deliberate, but the difference from the first day she had tried to walk was remarkable. She could now lift her leg without severe pain, take slow steps without fear of falling, and feel the muscles in her leg regaining strength. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the scents of the plains, the soft aroma of flowers, and the earthy fragrance of soil and grass. It reminded her of why she had loved riding through the open land so much. The plains that had once seemed dangerous now felt familiar, almost welcoming, as if they were part of her recovery and her journey back to life. As they walked, the farmer spoke quietly about the path ahead, the safest route back to her village, and what she could expect upon her return. He offered advice on pacing herself, avoiding strain, and asking for help if she needed it. Though she had recovered much of her strength, he reminded her that care and caution were still essential. She listened attentively, appreciating his guidance. In his words, she felt not only practical wisdom but also the depth of his concern. It was a care that went beyond duty. It was born of genuine empathy, of having seen her struggle and choosing to walk with her through it, step by step. The woman reflected on the days that had passed. She remembered the fall from her horse, the sharp pain, and the terrifying hours spent alone in the plains. She thought of the fear that had gripped her, the sense of helplessness she had felt, and the uncertainty about whether anyone would find her. And then she remembered the farmer, the unexpected presence that had changed everything. He had come quietly, with no expectation of reward, simply to help someone in need. His patience, his care, and his steadfast attention had given her life a second chance. The memory of that kindness filled her with gratitude and a quiet reverence for the goodness that people could show, even in unexpected moments. By mid-morning, they returned to the farmhouse, where she began preparing for the journey back to her village. The farmer helped her gather what she needed: simple clothing, a small bundle of food, and a few personal items. Though the process was straightforward, there was a weight to it, a sense of finality. She realized that she would soon leave the safety of this farmhouse, the routine that had guided her recovery, and the man who had become a central figure in her life over the past weeks. She felt a pang of sadness at the thought of leaving, tempered by the anticipation of returning to her family and community. It was a mixture of emotions that she had not fully expected to feel. Before leaving, the farmer carefully examined her leg one last time, checking the splint, testing her movements, and giving her advice for continued care. He spoke softly, reassuring her that she was ready, that she could walk safely, and that he had confidence in her strength. She listened, absorbing his words with a sense of trust and respect. Though she had regained much of her physical ability, she knew that this journey was also about emotional resilience, the courage to face the world again after an experience that had shaken her deeply. The farmer's presence, his guidance, and his unwavering care had prepared her for this moment. When they finally stepped outside, the sun was high, illuminating the wide expanse of the plains. The wind carried the familiar scents of grass and earth, and the sound of distant birds filled the air. She felt a sense of freedom returning, a reminder of the plains she loved and the open spaces that had always been a part of her spirit. With the farmer walking beside her, supporting her with his steady presence, she felt ready to face the journey ahead. Each step was careful but confident, a testament to the progress she had made, both physically and emotionally. The journey back to her village was slow but steady. She moved with the aid of a sturdy cane, taking the time to rest when necessary and pacing herself according to the farmer's guidance. The plains stretched endlessly around them, a mix of familiar landscapes and new sights. She noticed the subtle details, the movement of grass in the wind, the shimmer of sunlight on distant rocks, and the gentle sound of water from a stream far off. These details, which she might have overlooked before, now felt like small gifts from the world, reminders of beauty, life, and the strength she had found within herself. As they approached the outskirts of her village, the woman's heart began to race with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She wondered how her family would react to seeing her again, whether they would recognize the changes that had occurred during her time away. She also thought about the farmer, the man who had helped her through her darkest hours, and felt a quiet gratitude for his guidance and care. The thought of leaving him behind was bittersweet, but she understood that their paths had intersected for a reason, and that the impact of this journey would remain with her forever. Upon entering the village, she was greeted by familiar faces, family members, friends, and neighbors, who rushed to her side with concern and relief. They had heard of her accident and feared the worst, and seeing her safe and reasonably well brought tears to their eyes. She smiled, expressing her joy and gratitude, and recounted the story of her fall and her recovery as best she could. Though she could not fully convey the depth of her experience or the role the farmer had played, her family understood that she had been cared for and protected in a way that went beyond ordinary kindness. They celebrated her safe return, grateful for the help that had reached her in the most unexpected way. Even as she reunited with her family, the woman carried the lessons of her journey with her. She thought about the plains, the fall, the hours of pain and uncertainty, and the quiet farmhouse where she had found safety and care. She remembered the farmer's patience, his kindness, and the unwavering support he had offered. She understood now that acts of human compassion, small or large, could have a profound impact. They could change the course of someone's life, restore hope, and build bonds that transcended circumstance. The memory of this experience remained vivid, a testament to resilience, trust, and the extraordinary capacity for kindness in the human heart. In the days that followed, the woman resumed her life in the village. She walked more confidently, helped with daily chores, and participated in her community once again. Yet, the memory of the farmer and the farmhouse lingered. She often thought of him, wondering how he spent his days, hoping that his life was filled with the same quiet peace he had offered her. She knew that the bond they had formed, though born from necessity, was lasting in her heart, a reminder of what it meant to be helped, to be trusted, and to trust in return. Her recovery was complete, but the emotional lessons she had learned continued to shape her life. She carried with her a deep understanding of patience, compassion, and the importance of human connection. She shared her story with others, not to seek attention, but to honor the kindness she had received and to inspire appreciation for the unexpected helpers in life. The experience had changed her, making her stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the support and love that could emerge in the most unlikely moments. In the end, the Apache woman's journey was not just about surviving a fall or healing a broken leg. It was about discovering the depth of human kindness, the power of patience, and the enduring impact of trust and care. She had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty, and through it all, she had found hope, resilience, and a quiet friendship that would remain in her heart forever. And though the plains stretched endlessly beyond her village, she knew that she had been forever shaped by the man who had helped her stand again, one careful step at a time.